I have Brian Wang on tonight on Good News Tuesday. Is it an April Fool's joke, Brian? The
I think
joke
we're past noon, so it's not. No,
doesn't count anymore.
doesn't
Anyway,
count anymore.
Nicholas Gibbs had to bow out for today. Hopefully, maybe we'll grab him and maybe he'll be on Friday night when it would normally be Brian's turn. We'll see how that all works out during the course of the week. Anyway, we have a another April Fool's Day on the market, Brian. It was very, very bizarre. We
Mhm.
have, you said, you've been saying for at least 10 days, maybe longer, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you've been saying that tomorrow would be all of the bad news would be baked in, and then we would be able to start off the next day. It doesn't mean it would rally the next day, but all the bad news would be baked in. The market and Tesla would both be like satiated with bad news, and then we would move maybe sideways for a while, but we'd be trending up. Did the market just beat you by 2 days? What's going on here?
Yeah. It may have already turned. That if the everyone feared the worst news for the Tesla volume deliveries, and the China last week came in at just shy of 21,000 vehicles, which I think probably most people were probably expecting 15 to 17,000.
Yeah.
So that meant you beat it by 3 to 5,000 quite handily.
Mhm.
And also it means that um, when you have good weeks in China now, you can have 21,000, 22,000 vehicles per week.
Yeah.
So that looks great for Q2,
Right.
right? So it also takes the edge off of Q1 because it has to be 3 to 5,000 more than whatever you were expecting before,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So if your worst case was, oh, end of the world, we're at 240,000, now you say, well, it's 245 or 243. If you're at 245,000, you would have said you were probably expecting China's last week to be 15 or 13,000. You were probably even expecting a worse number.
Right.
So then the fact you came at 21 means you probably beat it by six.
Mhm.
So again, it takes those low numbers and says it can't be that bad,
Right.
right? And then the other thing would be that we don't know what the last weeks were in Austin and and Fremont.
Mhm.
But if China did that well, you'd have to start being more positive about whatever happened uh, in last week there as well. So that's part of the turn. And then the other thing would be that the overall macro, the tariffs, I think people are starting to worry less. But still tomorrow's the reveal, and
Yeah.
so we don't know until we see both those things.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the tariffs more in a minute, but I did want to say that the VIX is still at 2177. That's indicating that people are still nervous about the tariffs tomorrow. I don't think there's much else. I think that's pretty much where all of the nervousness is. And then the I'm sorry, Tom Lee agrees with you. It's always nice to have Tom Lee in your camp. Calls
He's a smart
tomorrow.
guy.
He calls it tomorrow a clearing event.
Hmm.
It's his name for it. You call it maximum bad news. He calls it a clearing event. So if he's right, and other people were agreeing with him on CNBC today, but not many, most people are pretty bearish about the immediate future. But quite frankly, it's hard to find. I'm having a hard time finding the economic indicators that are showing a downturn. Now, they might be showing a little slowing, but they're not really showing a downturn. They're just showing it's kind of soft right now. And consumers being anxious would be a reason for that. But some of the latest numbers from Bank of America are showing, well, maybe the people aren't spending as much, but they're putting that money into their savings. They've got the money and it's going into savings at a very nice clip around 4.3%.
Yeah. The actual numbers on many things seem pretty good.
All right. So Gene Munster, specifically with regard to Tesla, was just on CNBC, and he says he thinks 355 tomorrow is about right. Now you would add five to that probably and say 360, because I'm sure he was not. I'm sure you're right about what his number was for this week, and he wasn't counting that. And then he's also saying he thinks the entire year will be down 8%.
Yeah.
He thinks the first three quarters will be down, and it won't turn positive until the fourth quarter. I think that's the biggest bunch of nonsense I've ever heard. I mean, it's such bad analysis that I'm beginning to wonder why I've ever followed. You thought that Gene was smart, because I do think he's smart. But how does he come to those numbers when he knows the first quarter is about the Model Y being in changeover, and has to think that
It's almost like he and your Gary Black have chosen to believe everything that Troy Teslake says, because Troy Teslake had the 1.65
yeah,
million,
yeah,
1.68
yeah,
million number,
yeah,
and he came out with 355,
right,
right? So it looked like Gene said, "I'll take Troy's numbers. I'm
right.
taking." That seemed to be his only analysis on that. He's like, "I'm not gonna bother doing any of my own numbers anymore. I don't know what's happening. Troy's looking at this. I'm looking at Troy. That's it."
Now, to Gene's credit, he then turned right around and says, I don't care. It's all about the Optimus and the Robotaxi. So he thinks shifting sentiment tomorrow. He's got another name for it. He calls it shifting sentiment tomorrow to earnings. And he thinks it's only going to be non-cap this year of $2 to 220. No, it's going to be more. It's going to be, yeah, I don't know the number, but it's going to be more than that. But then here's where he's way off, especially if he believes that Robotaxi and Optimus are coming. He's only got $3 to 340 next year.
Right. Right. Yeah. So none of that is self-consistent in any way. It doesn't, yeah, none of that makes sense.
He was also asked about how to model the Musk factor. How do you put that into your spreadsheet? I heard somebody today say, yes, Tesla is Elon Musk. Elon Musk is Tesla. I mean, you know, we have to be sincere about this. The key man issue at Tesla is huge, but he ain't going anywhere. He's got plenty of time to do what he needs to do, in my opinion. He will probably slow down his Doge effort in the middle or end of May. And I don't care anyway, because I don't think, I don't think if he spent another 10 hours a week on Tesla, that it would necessarily make a difference. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think any of that matters. It's like he's, all the other people there, all the other executives are hugely capable. He's not, you know, making new things on the line. Tom Zhu's doing all the things in the factory. It's like there's 150,000 capable
Right.
employees over there. It's like Elon helps, and if he needed to fix some particular crisis issue,
Mhm.
he would get in there and do it, right? So
And
it,
I kind of like what he's doing instead. I like that he was at that Wisconsin deal 2 nights ago. I believe that probably sold vehicles. He's
Mhm,
going to be on tonight on Fox News again, or it's either tonight or tomorrow night. I think it's tonight. He's going to be on Fox News again,
mhm,
talking about what Doge is doing, and I think that's going to sell Tesla vehicles. I think every
mhm.
time he gets on TV and starts talking about these various things, more and more conservative voters, middle of the road voters, and even some liberal voters are saying, I need to take a look at this Tesla.
Right, right. So I think again, I think the maximum bad news happens, and we're about there, and then after that, the bad news will start fading, and we have more and more good news. Because the chance of some monster good news, low price model, FS, another version of FSD, more FSD sales in China, everything is skewing towards the positive. Like, and then you've already got 21,000 cars in a week in China. How can you have bad week after bad week going forward? Because none of them care about the China buyers. None of them care about whatever happening in U.S. politics.
Right.
So yeah.
So to argue with you again, not me, but I'm going to let Wells Fargo argue with you. He says Wells Fargo just added Tesla to its Q2 2025 tactical ideas list as underweight, citing slowing deliveries, price cut struggles, and execution risks in autonomy. The firm maintained a 130 price target, $130
Mhm.
on the stock, implying significant downside from current levels. We continue to see delivery growth declines and diminished return on price cuts, driving a 280 basis point year-over-year decline in 2025 auto gross margin, said Wells Fargo analysts. The bank says Tesla's deliveries are trending lower across key markets, with Europe down 40%, China down, well, not anymore. China's up now. They're a little slow on that one. North America down 3%. How do they know? They haven't got a clue whether it's not. And Wells Fargo believes Tesla has few remaining levers to drive volume growth beyond price cuts and model refreshes. Well, model refreshes, um,
Already happened. Yeah.
we've already got the model refreshes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm trying to figure it out. It's like the Model 3 and the Model Y have been refreshed. Cybertruck is only a year old. That leaves Model S and Model X, which were had a little kind of minor cosmetic refresh about 18 months ago. So it's not like it's an old set of product. And Model Y is the #1 car in the world. And Model 3 is one of the best-selling BEVs in the world.
Yeah.
Maybe in the top 5 of all BEVs in the world. Certainly in China, they just announced today, first quarter, it looks like the Model 3 will be #5 among BEVs.
Yeah. So again, it's cherry picking a bunch of stuff that you want to be negative. Wells Fargo is headquartered in California. So it sounds like the analyst is, in the other political party and just can't get past those emotional issues and has skewed analysis.
All right. Well, okay. So I think that kind of wraps up the analysis of where Tesla is going. I could imagine a retreat tomorrow if the number is, especially after 2 days, 2 big up days. So if the number is even in the 355 to 370 range, I could imagine a pullback with the what do you call it, the investor relations compilation number being like 377. So I think anything under that, it could be either flat or it could be down depending on just how low it goes. Would that be what you're thinking, or do you think it could even go up if it is below the 377?
I think it could still go up below 377. But the issue though is that if we're in that 350 to 370 range or 365 range, then it's a relatively neutral nothing burger for the volume because people are pretty much expecting that. So then, but Tesla's still moving around like crazy. The market's still moving around like crazy because of all the other stuff. Right. So the fact that wasn't a driver and you're looking at other things, the stock is still moving around. So it's not like it's going to go, oh, everyone's calm, everyone's good, right? It's performance within a lot of noise of the macro.
Right.
So
well, the tariff numbers are not coming out until after market tomorrow. The announcement's going to be at 1 o'clock. So we will have another whole market session that is going to be pre-tariff. So it'll be interesting to see in that environment. Now we do have other financial news coming out tomorrow, which including the ADP job numbers.
Right.
But the job numbers that came out today on the JOLTS, pretty flat, pretty normal.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting negative numbers on either job report.
Yeah. So the way I view some of these things is like if everyone's expecting 2.8 on CPI or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it comes out 2.8. So then the market's still moving around, right? But the 2.8 coming in at 2.8 in the driver.
Right.
So if we're coming in at 350, 355, that's about what everyone's expecting, right? And we come in there, then people have said, okay, that's in the rearview mirror. I'm not looking at it anymore. I don't care about that. So then I'm like looking forward to the earnings call and the other things for Tesla, right? And then the earnings call, I think we'll have the numbers will be relatively automatic. Right now there haven't been that much changes. It's like when you get the volume numbers, it's going to come in plus or minus 5-10 cents on EPS, right? It's not going to be huge either way, right? Because if your model's any good and you've been testing it out for the last 10, 15 quarters, you should not be surprised when they say here's the volume, then we have this result, right? There's some other ways it can move around some, but the financials wouldn't be the continuing story because we're coming into FSD, robotaxi,
Right.
and
Oh,
through model car,
okay.
right? So then what's moving on the day and anticipation of the day is, will Elon and the team, especially Elon, sound really happy, really jazzed? And it's like, how can he not feel that way? How can he not sound that way when we have the low price car approvals in Europe and China for FSD, um, the robotaxi coming out in June, which is again repeated.
Yeah.
So that discussion can only be good. Like there's no way that he's going to introduce some, like there's nothing negative to introduce,
Mhm, mhm.
right? Like I can't think of anything that matters. You're going to give small negative
Sure,
things,
sure,
but it's
sure.
like nothing that moves the stock. So that goes to the point of like, for the stock, for the company, after tomorrow, what's the big news? Like you're recovering. How much do you recover,
Right.
right? So
All right, let's move on to tariffs. You and I have spent a lot of time on various times over the last couple of weeks talking about tariffs, but I have a couple of new ideas to throw into the pot. So Bill Ackman says Israel sets the example of how all of our allies should preemptively respond to President Donald Trump. His desire is to level the tariff playing field for America. And so �伊𝐞𝐬𝐝𝐲, which on X is �伊𝐞𝐝, says Israel has removed all tariffs on all American products. There you
mhm,
go. It's that
right,
simple.
right.
So here's my question, Brian. I asked this of Brian White. I guess that'll be on later, so he'll be able to answer it his way later today. But I'm trying to figure out why this isn't the best solution for our allies and even our competitors. The only thing I can figure out how can they be more worried about allowing American goods into their country than they are about losing export business to our country?
Well, if you're not an exporter, then you can say I don't care
Right,
about U.S.
right.
exports, and then I keep my because I'm trying to protect my thing. And also, these places could be corrupt, so then they're getting payoffs from their
From the
domestic um, companies who would get wrecked. Some of them might get wrecked from an open market by not having the protection,
right. But
right?
if you're looking at it strictly from an economic standpoint, if you bring your economists in and you're not corrupt, you're
Mhm.
going, okay, we export this amount of stuff to the United States.
Mhm.
25% tariff either means we're going to have to find a way to support these people on those prices,
Mhm.
so they can lower their export price, or we're going to have to devalue our dollar. Are these people going to have to work on lower margins, which is not good for us? So all are they going to lose the business? I mean, there's nobody's going to pay 25% extra for most products. So that's the economic viewpoint from the exporting country. The alternative is we drop our import duties to zero, import tariffs
Mhm.
to zero. We lose some revenue that we're now collecting from these importers in our country. We lose some of that revenue, but we get to continue to export like nothing, nothing changes. We just continue to export as normal. It would seem to me that sounds like in most cases it's either, oh, and we don't take a risk that some of our uh, uh, local companies, the companies that are now building in our country, we don't take the risk that they go over and open a factory in the United States.
Mhm.
Well, those risks seem to be at least balanced with the risk of lowering your revenues by reducing the tariffs. So, other than corruption, do you think they're just worried about change? I don't know. I can't figure it out.
I think they have not done enough detailed analysis to be able to figure it out. And then they're anchored. And so in negotiations, you get to, fix that. I don't want to sell more than pay more than MSRP, right? And so MSRP, the fixed number is whatever we're currently at. So then they're thinking, oh, changing it is not a good thing versus, you know, zero cost basing it and say, if I did the drop, one, relations are good. And then it's like, how much of this are we doing? Right? Because when I ran through the import export numbers, for many, many places, they're not um, exporting. Well, the number of exports that they have relative to their overall economy usually is not that huge,
Mhm.
right? And then it goes to your point that they should take a look at that scenario of
Yeah,
like, just drop it,
yeah,
equalize it, make the issue go away. How bad can it be? Especially because like it's like auto is a big one for Europe and for Canada and Mexico. But then many other industries, ag industries and stuff like that, I don't think it's that big a deal. Other than there is like in Canada, they're protecting the milk
right.
um,
Dairy.
agriculture thing, and I think that they would get would lose a lot of that capability. But it's fine. The milk lobby, farmers are strong in particularly Ontario, whatever. So, but is that worth everything else? Because
Yeah,
if you can
yeah, yeah,
settle down your auto thing, then the fact that I'm losing having to import cheap milk, um, and the thing is, you can still slap on a Canadian flag on your Canadian produced milk, and then all the people who like want to support it can pay
right.
more. People pay more for
Sure.
organic milk or
Yeah.
like other stuff like that.
Stupid.
So there's nothing against you doing um, non-financial things. I
Yep.
can just say, just like the Buy USA campaign,
Sure, sure.
a long time ago, you just put, Buy Canada. And then we let the prices fall where they may. And then if people are that worked up about it, they'll still buy the Canadian milk. So then you could go, we'll get the US and so this trade war thing off our back, and we'll depend upon patriotism to have us still sell stuff
Right.
and minimize the impact. Yeah.
Yeah. So it just seems to me that for the most part, it would be smarter to drop your tariffs at least as a test, just as a what see what happens. Drop it, say, okay, US, you got me. We'll
Yeah.
we'll we'll drop them to zero. You guys drop them to zero, or we'll drop them to 2%, you drop them to 2%, whatever, or even 10%, something that's manageable. And then we'll see what happens. We'll see how the market plays out. And then you can reimpose the tariff, and then the United States will reimpose, a similar tariff.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one thing. So the other thing is, I'm beginning to think that the framing of the issue with the American people by the administration might also need tweaking. So I don't, maybe you don't see it this way, but I feel like right now the framing is that this is a fairness issue. That's always where President Trump starts. It's like unfair and unreasonable that they charge us more than we charge them, and it's hollowed out our manufacturing industry, and so we need to claw back our manufacturing capabilities in the United States, especially in the strategic areas. Okay, I think those are two great issues. I think those are fantastic issues. But what if, and maybe this other issue that I'm going to suggest is just too complex for the average American to get. But if you're going to spend X as a government, you need to have Y revenue. You basically need to have X revenue, but it turns out we always have less than X revenue. But let's just assume that in a perfect world, we would have the same amount of revenue coming in as the amount of revenue the government's spending. So that X revenue can come from a few places. It can come from things like extraction fees on oil and mining and things of that nature. It could be a national sales tax. It could be income tax like we have now. It could be tariffs. So there's a bunch of, it could be fees for different things like national parks and whatnot. So you have all these different places that these monies come in. But in the United States, the biggest one is the income tax. So every dollar that we raise in tariffs is technically a dollar that we don't need in income tax, all things being equal. And it
Right.
seems to me that that would be the way to couch it. whether they're talking about, oh, we'll give you $5,000 back. And yes, that's something that's visual and you can kind of get it better than you say, well, for every dollar in tariffs we need one less dollar from you from income tax. But I wonder if that is not as played up as much as it could be.
It's the way I view it. And also the other big one is after income tax is payroll tax, which is basically the company taking it from your, you know, what would have been your compensation,
Right.
right? But they're doing their end. So if you can save 1 trillion, 1.5 trillion, 2 trillion, whatever it is, and shift some stuff around, then to me, getting the payroll tax, say 1.5 times bigger.
Mhm.
Like if you did nothing, you double it and then you're done, right? Everything on payroll tax, nothing on income tax. The only thing would be that if you're doing some kind of company or other things where there's no payroll tax, then those people are the big winners, some fraction, and they have to avoid, you know, um, gaming it and something that way. So there's some other factor that way. But then, um, if the government wants its money, which is like, say, 20% of all GDP,
Mhm.
right? It ends up being in that range, like 18%,
Yes.
21%, 20%. So if you take it that way, how do I care how you take it?
Yeah.
Right? There's other stuff about the spending versus the consuming and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, I'm making this money, you're taking 20, right? It ends up being what you're doing in this, like, oh, you want to not take from the poorest, so you
Right.
have some starting
Right.
point thing. But other than that, it's like there I have to take it from you and I have to make you go through 40 hours of work to do your filing and then do this obstacle course marathon and then I take the money from you.
Right.
It's like if you're gonna take 20, take 20. Why are you bothering me with all this other stuff? Right. So I
And
think that,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. Well, like in the old argument with regard to a sales tax, why are we taxing income, which gives a disincentive to work harder and earn more income, as opposed
Mhm.
to taxing consumption, which
Mhm.
leaves your income alone grows the amount of money that you have to spend, and therefore makes it affordable to pay a little bit more for the tariffed items. And
Right.
then you're disincentivizing consumption compared and incentivizing income. Seems to be a better system.
Right. And so the entire complexity of it to fine tune who gets what is just one ripe for corruption. It doesn't happen in all places. Like again, like Hong Kong, it doesn't happen. They have a flat tax, 15%. Taiwan doesn't do it. So there's plenty of other countries, big developed countries that do not do all this stuff. It's just like, we need this much, that's how we're going to take. And then we adjust that up and down. And then you have to fill stuff out. We take it from the company. The company says, here, we're going to give you, 80% to you, 20% to them. Done. Why did it have to come to me to do my filing, my situation? Like the extra complexity shouldn't be there. And again, if I need to give more to some people, one, I can just, take some of the money that came in and give it straight to them,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So again, there's no need for a bunch of complexity and a bunch of stuff. So in that message of like, one, how we take it shouldn't matter that much. And if we make it easier, then we don't need the code. Again, going to every other country,
Right.
no one else has as complex a code as the United States does. When I was filing in Canada, it was like, a little 30, 40 page thing, a little booklet, and I fill out by hand and then hand it in. It was not great, but it was okay. And again, these other ones, like in Taiwan, it was a postcard. I
Right.
write in how much I did and I sent it in,
Right.
right? In Hong Kong, I think I had filling out at all. They just like took it and was done, right? So, um, again, there's compliance doesn't have to be like this. If we could say, why are we doing it the hard way?
Right, right. Yeah. So it's harder. It's disincentivizing income. So if we were to buy the argument that it's better to incentivize income and disincentivize consumption, if you're going to do any, if you're going to take it anyway, then, and let's just agree that, okay, we're going to have a sales tax. But would we rather have a 10% sales tax on everything, or a 20% sales tax on imported items and no sales tax on domestically produced items, then you incentivize things to be made domestically.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's again, not trying to do too much with your tax code and in your sales tax system. It's when you try and get too fancy with it that things get really complicated and special and all that kind of stuff. It's like we're just trying to get enough money to spend on the stuff we agree on spending. Done. And then if we want to do other stuff, let's do other stuff, but not on the back of this. It's because they were able to Trojan horse and put in all these things that it just became so unwieldy.
So 21% of the US population, the voting population, 21% of the voters have confidence or approve of the way Congress, the Democratic Congress, is how the Democrats in Congress are doing. 21%. And you say, well, okay, but the Republicans, obviously, it's almost, no, only 40% of Democrats approve of the job that Congress is doing right now, the Democratic Congress. You flip that, you got Trump today at 51% approval. And you've got right way, wrong way at 45%, which is the highest ever recorded. Not since, but no, the highest ever recorded. 45% people think the country's going in the right way. And just a few months ago, and pretty much as long as I can remember, it's always flipped. It's like 30% think it's going right way and 56% or 60% think it's going wrong way and the rest don't care. So we have the country apparently thinking things are going in the right way. They're not quite as happy with Trump as they might be with, Reagan or somebody who's a little more charming, but they're 51%. And then you've got the Democratic Congress in complete at the bottom, worst ever. These are the worst numbers ever for the Democratic Party. What are they thinking? Well, they got Bill Maher just ripping into them night after night after night. Is it because they just don't have any leadership? What do you think's going on?
I think there was a clear rejection of all the stuff that they were doing before, right? And then the stuff of moving waste and there's a bunch of these 80-20 things where it's like, okay, yeah, of course, that was insane waste. And so then they only have the message of like, I don't believe some of those things or to take some back, but the overall information is, yeah, we shouldn't have been spending on those things. So the Democrats, like there's some more moderate Democrats who are saying we have to agree, cheer, and get totally behind and beside the moves where it completely makes sense, right? Like we needed to get rid of whatever bad spending, sending it to Africa and blah, blah, blah for doing nothing. So they need to get on board with that and be willing to say, okay, that is correct. And we should be behind that and work with it. But they mostly cannot get themselves to that point. Either because they don't think their base will let them do it, or other stuff. And also the fact that let's say their support should have been at like 45%, right? So them being at 21, it's probably a split between the extreme base Democrats versus the moderate base Democrats, right? And so some of them are with the moderate, some of them are with the extreme, but there's nothing where they can do and say, I can get all 40, the entire, it's like I have half I can get and half. So then they're left frozen because it's like they can't, like the 20 that they get is maybe the same 20, right? Out of, 40% of the total population, it could have been 21 who support this, 21 support that, right? So they can't get to a unified thing. So they have no unifying message that they can come up with. And the fact that no leaders did just because none of them have cracked the code on how do I unify my side.
Right. Yeah. So if you are a moderate, if you are somebody who might be able to gin up most of the party, but you still have this 10 or 15% fringe, and you're not willing to go out and say that men can get pregnant and that you need tampons in the boys' room, then that 15% goes, oh, you're. I watched some lady a couple of nights ago on some little short video who are not. Yeah, she was giving a presentation in front of a group, and she said men are taller than women. Some of
Yeah,
the people in the room got up and walked out.
right.
Then she went, men are
Yeah.
generally have more muscle mass than women, and more people got up and walked out. It's like, how are you ever gonna convince, how are you ever gonna get the party together if you got people that walk out of the room when you say something as obvious and clear cut as men are taller and have more muscle mass?
Yeah. So it goes to that you have to get to some principal position and be able to, attract, your 50%, So previously, there was, say, support for balancing the budget on the Republican side, and then there was, the Tea Party movement, and then Trump found something for middle class and for the border and doing that kind of thing. So that uh, looks like a solution that's being executed upon and that people agree with, that is the good way to go. So then how do you convince the middle class and a broad spectrum of 50% that already are not committed to that, or that there's an even better way to do it,
Mhm.
right? And so until they come up with a better plan and then communicate that plan, then there is no, you have to, if I'm going to beat Coca-Cola, I have to come up with a way better Pepsi,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So if I have no better Pepsi, I'm just, you know, then you have nothing to get behind. It's like, okay, I got this other thing, and it's not very good. And then people just say, well,
Yeah, so the CNN pollster that was giving that whole list, that wild guy that's like all over the place. Uh,
yeah.
he's a very odd individual, but his analysis usually is fairly good. But tonight, his analysis after saying all this was that the majority of those who are unhappy with the Democrats want the Democrats, the Congress, the Democratic Congress, to fight Trump harder.
Mhm.
And to your point, my thought would be instead of fighting him harder, maybe you need to co-opt. Maybe you need to do the Bill Clinton thing and triangulate
Judo. Yeah.
and grab off a piece of the Republican platform and make it your own, rather than just say resist, 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 screaming at the top of your lungs. I mean, the 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 Democrats should be, I think, if they should be worried about anything, is the way that the Democrats are acting in the streets right now, in terms of acting like numbskulls, screaming at cars,
Mhm.
pounding on cars that may be being driven by Democrats.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just nonsense.
So I think Gavin Newsom's trying the co-opting, going to a more neutral thing.
Yeah,
He's trying that route.
right.
So we'll see if he can pull that off. The problem is he has a history where he wasn't doing that, so you have to pivot into it. But to your point, admit certain things were wrong and then shift over. So there are some that are trying that approach, um, and then I don't see quite as many being willing to say, um, let's cooperate a lot more and try and make this work. And there's not many that are trying to do that.
It's,
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting. My wife is very astute politically. I mean, really astute politically. Of course, she's a English literature professor, so she's read all the great works. I mean, she's got a huge background. And but last night we were talking, and she didn't realize that the main core of the strategic part of the MAGA movement is what you were talking about a minute ago, is just grab those 80-20 issues and the 70-30 issues and go with them. You
Mhm.
got plenty of time to work your way down to the 55-45 issues just go ahead and slam it on the immigration and the other issues that the voters are really clear on. And she
Yeah.
said was not even recognizing that that's what they were doing. I was surprised that she hadn't seen that. So how would you, I don't see any other way to overcome the Republicans on those issues unless you try to co-opt.
Right. Yeah. You have to co-op, like when it's A20, get on the A20 side, and then find some other lowdown issue that you can then um, differentiate yourself.
Right.
Like that's okay, that makes sense. We'll go with that. We're not gonna fight uselessly upon it just for the sake of fighting, and then do it that way, which is a reversion to politics in probably 70s, some aspects of the 80s. Well, no, not 70s. It was probably more
The
80s
90s,
and
yeah,
90s, right?
90s.
And maybe 50s and 60s, right? 50s, before the 60s, right? So there was a few decades where it was everyone's trying to get along and just figure out how to make things work. And then the differentiation wasn't that much. 60s had a lot of wage issues. 70s had a lot of wage issues. So that was not a good example. But there were, before the 2000s, there was a more moderate
Right.
mainstream set of stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's always this undercurrent, but in terms of to my mind, the craziness of the resistance right now, I don't remember it in my lifetime. Maybe I'm just being Pollyannic, but it seems like it's really way worse. Okay. So what did the markets do today? We had Tesla up $9.30. I was not expecting that. I thought it would probably, flat or down today. I would have never called that. In the after hours, it was down more. It is only down 10 cents now. So even as we get closer and closer to the numbers tomorrow morning, we're still looking at being at 268, which is pretty surprising for what I would have thought a couple of weeks ago. Um, Dow was down a little bit, $11.80. Let me go to the percentages. So the Dow down 0.03. NASDAQ finished up almost a full percent at 80 at 0.87. S&P finished up 0.38. I mean, that's a pretty good day.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So are we done testing? Well, depending on if the tariffs aren't like completely nutty, I mean, completely, which I don't think they'll be. I really believe that it will be tomorrow, as you point out, the clearinghouse, the worst news day, but it won't be nutty. It'll be okay. And I think that's what the market's telling us, that it's going to be okay. Then we probably aren't going to ever test that correction again, right?
For Tesla or for the market?
For the market, yeah.
For the market?
10%. The S&P 10% down.
Um, there can be surprises, like
Right.
the war, but stuff like that. But if things are proceeding as based on what happened the next 2 days, right? That okay, the tariff thing is going to happen, but it's not going to be as disorderly as people are fearing, and then other stuff comes in relatively okay. Then um, I think the underlying trend of positive technological productivity from AI and other things like that will help the markets. And then I think if we're past the hard part of the cutting of the spending and other stuff like that, then I think there will then be a upward momentum to the markets. So if we were to get into the summer and we have quarter and half point cuts and with other things and productivity gains, then it's going to be positive overall. So if we get past this rough patch, which we could be, it happens. One interesting thing is that from the first term, 2017, right? April 2nd was the bottom that time.
Oh,
That was for the overall market. The
interesting.
worst day was April 2nd.
Interesting.
So if things happen again that way, similar kind of playbook kind of thing, then early April 2nd may not be the exact same
Yeah,
date,
yeah, of course.
could be the point where okay, we shook things up and then
building.
things start marching back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the other things I'm noticing is that they are parading out somebody from the administration pretty much every single day.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's Trump, sometimes it's Musk, sometimes it's Besant, sometimes, but almost every single day they're communicating with the people.
Hmm.
And over time, that would seem to me to calm.
Yeah.
If you get somebody out there every single day trying to communicate the plan, that would seem to create a calm.
Give a calm and also a certainty. You
Certainty.
know what's going on,
Right.
right? It's like, okay, this is happening, here's why. Then it's less mysterious.
Right.
Uh,
And
Right.
maybe, and as you, to your point, probably less chaotic in the future, more consistency with regard to, I mean, they're being totally consistent with regard to the top level stuff. It's just the chaos is all in kind of the implementation. But as
Right.
far as the top level stuff, rebuild the middle class, rebuild manufacturing in the country, make sure we're making strategic products here in the United States, get a level playing field with regard to the rest of the countries in the world, end all wars, uh, take Iran out of the picture in terms of their ability to mess things up. I mean, all of those things that he ran on. Oh, stop the immigration and get all these people out that shouldn't be in the country. I mean, all of that is the high level promises are being kept on an everyday basis.
Yeah. So I think that the goal was to get this kind of like sorted out within the first 6 months. So another, what, 2 months, and then that should be sorted. And then it's just continued follow through implementation at that point where, okay, the plan's there, we got the negotiations done. I think they do want to like not drag out the negotiation with Canada, Mexico, and Europe. They want to get it done, right? They want a particular range of results. And then once they get into the range, they'll say, okay, yeah, now we're done.
Yeah. All right. So the Magnificent Seven were all up today at the end. In fact, there was quite a nice directionally at the end of the day. The Magnificent Seven, the NASDAQ, the Dow, all of them were headed higher, ended on the highs. No, not the highs of the day, but ended up with a very much of an uptick at the end of the day. Would suggest that maybe tomorrow morning will be okay. And the Kathy Woods were mixed, actually. Some of them down quite hard, actually. Interesting. Some down 2.7%. Yeah. But then a couple of them were up. But anyway, but the bonds, which would normally be something that the Kathy Woods are responding to, the bonds were down nicely, making Randy happy today. So another 8.4 basis points to 4.161. We are now only 17 basis points away. Could happen in 2 days if we kept going down. In 2 days, we could be in the threes, Brian.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This is the key to me. This is
Mhm.
the key. I think it is the Besant. I think it is to commerce. I think it is probably to Elon. We got to get these 10-year treasuries under three. I
Under
mean,
four.
under four, into the threes. Mortgages will drop another 25, 40 basis points. That'll be huge in the real estate area. This is looking really good right now. Now, because we're doing this early today, because I have an appointment, actually, if we stretch it out, Brian, for about 4 minutes, we could get into we could actually see the pre-market because that's 3 o'clock, right? Yeah, 3 o'clock California time. But we could okay, Bitcoin. Wow. So Bitcoin had a good day, up 2,400 at 85,242.
Mhm.
So, what do you think about the theory, and why do you think it is that Bitcoin has been almost 100% following Tesla, or Tesla following Bitcoin, that they've been moving almost exactly, and you can overlay the Bitcoin graph on the Tesla graph, and it looks the same.
Um, I think just owners, like the retail owners, overlap a lot.
Wow.
Someone who owns Bitcoin happens to own Tesla and vice versa in a significant way. So then they kind of trade together. They both have a technology component to them. Yeah. So just that kind of commonality overlap, I think, explains a lot of that.
Um, uh, NVIDIA is up today, but is still sitting at 110.
Mhm.
It's up 1.63%. That makes it down from 153 was his all-time high. Now, Jensen has not been on the Doge team. He's not been
Mhm.
saying anything negative about Democrats.
Mhm.
He doesn't wear a MAGA hat,
Yeah.
but he's down almost as much as Tesla is. So,
Mhm.
what do you think's going on there? They have great earnings and they're growing like crazy. Their PE is under 40 at 37.47. What's your theory on NVIDIA right now?
I think it's just concern about how many B200s they're making, how many B300s and Ultras or whatever they're going to sell, or Rubens, the next chips and that kind of stuff. So it's just that uh, the fear that the AI boom doesn't happen, so that's why it's off, is that they're concerned about that kind of stuff.
So they're
Yeah.
looking back to the dot-com period and saying that a couple of those high flyers and the dot-com that were the hardware makers uh, didn't carry through into the 2000s.
Right. So they're just worried about that, the stuff like the China DeepSeek thing using less compute. I think I don't agree with that thesis. I think that when you make things cheaper, better, more efficient, which has been a constant trend with the AI. Whereas like you look at it, like the cost per million tokens keeps dropping. So the fact that it gets cheaper, more efficient just means you can do more with it.
Right.
And then you will do that with a lot of NVIDIA and other AI chips. So um, I'm of the you need as much intelligence in AI data centers as you can possibly make.
Okay. All right. So we now have some information. Do we or don't we? No, I still don't have the pre-market. What's going on here? Let's try again. Maybe is it three? No, it's not 3:30. Maybe it's just not out yet. It's 3:01. Maybe I'm pushing too hard. I don't have
Mhm.
those pre-market numbers. Um, I was looking at the headlines just to see if there's okay, I'm going to give it one more try and then I'm going to give up. It's okay if people can look it up themselves. Um, no pre-market numbers yet. Seems odd. Okay. We'll close it up, Brian.
Okay.
It is fantastic to have you on here and helping. And
Mhm.
we will maybe see you on Friday night.
Mhm.
100% you will be on over the weekend because you've got a story to tell about the Model Q and what
Mhm.
you think the Model Q is all about and why
Mhm.
and the details of all that. So for
Yes.
sure, that'll either be Friday night or over the weekend. Looking forward to doing that with you. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.